LEIGHTDICKEY.com. Do you have an event or occasion coming up that could use a special touch? Perhaps a wedding, a production, a show? Good! Then you're in luck. Hayley Moores is who you're looking for. Hayley is a makeup artist in the Toronto, Ontario area, specializing in bridal, glam, natural, and special effects. She's incredibly talented, professional, easy to work with, and has a personality that is second to none. To book Hayley Moores today, follow her on Instagram at mad_milash, that's MAD_MILASH, or email her at madmilash, again, that's MADMILASH @gmail.com. Book Hayley Moores today, you'll be glad you did. LEIGHTDICKEY.com. LEIGHTDICKEY.com. Do you find yourself reminiscing on what life was like when you were younger? Do your favorite songs, movies, and TV shows instantly take you back to a simpler time? Great! Then you're in the right place. Join me, Leigh Dickey, on my new web series and podcast, Yo Nostalgia, where I cover everything you grew up with. From films and toys to fads and trends, Yo Nostalgia has it all. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever podcasts are available. Follow along on social media at Yo Nostalgia Show to keep up on this time-traveling trip. Yo Nostalgia, breathing new life into your memories, available everywhere now. LEIGHTDICKEY.com. LEIGHTDICKEY.com. Do you enjoy good conversation? Are you a person with many passions? Perfect. Then the Beats and Speaks podcast is for you. Join me, Leigh Dickey, every Friday for stories and interviews about everyday life with everyday people about everyday things. Everyone has a story, and I just want to help them tell it. The Beats and Speaks podcast, your everyday life, everyday stories, everyday people, comedy and entertainment audio joyride. Subscribe and download on LEIGHTDICKEY.com, Leigh Dickey TV on YouTube, and your favorite podcast app. The Beats and Speaks podcast, available everywhere now. LEIGHTDICKEY.com. LEIGHTDICKEY.com. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Leigh Dickey here. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast. Today, this week, I'm going to tell you about one of the strangest things I think I have ever seen. And that is a discarded wedding cake on the side of the road. I was on the sidewalk. I was walking and just saw a discarded wedding cake just sitting there chilling on the sidewalk. And I'm wondering, who discards a wedding cake? Like, I don't understand it, but we'll delve into that right after I tell you where you can find the Beats and Speaks podcast. Of course, new episodes of the Beats and Speaks podcast are released every single Friday on my official website, LEIGHTDICKEY.com, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever podcasts are available. Please do comment, like, share, and subscribe. Find us on YouTube as well under Leigh Dickey TV. All the links will be in the description down below. You can send your emails, comments, questions, and everything else, topic requests, and what have you, to LeightDickey@gmail.com. Remember to get in touch with me and the show. Follow along on social media. That's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at LeightDickey. You can also get in touch with me through my email address, as I said, at LeightDickey@gmail.com. Now that all the housekeeping is out of the way, before I forget, remember to rate us 5 stars and leave reviews too on your favorite podcast app and player of choice. Okay, now that all the housekeeping is taken care of and everything is out of the way, let's get into this week's topic. Who discards a wedding cake? How did I find a wedding cake on the side of the road, on the sidewalk, right here on a brand new episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast? All right, so yes, how did I find a discarded wedding cake on the sidewalk? And who discards a wedding cake on the sidewalk? I don't know, but it's a question that I'm going to attempt to answer and attempt to tell you about this week on the Beats and Speaks podcast. It was super weird. I was actually just on my daily walk because I like to get my steps in. I like to walk places. I've always loved to walk places. That's my preferred mode of transportation. I will, use my walker. And walk everywhere within my like immediate vicinity. I'm actually not that far from my home, and that's where I found this sort of discarded wedding cake. It was just chilling on the sidewalk. I don't know. It was just sitting there. It was like a beautiful 3 or 4 tier wedding cake. You saw the little miniature figure of the bride and groom on the top. It was all decorated. It was all frost iced. It looked gorgeous. I mean, from my eyes, I'm not a cake decorator. I'm not the bride and or groom in this scenario. It just, I don't know the couple either, right? So I just saw this while walking to my outdoor office, if you will. I just saw this on my daily walk, and I just thought it was super strange. Like, who just discard it? Like, it wasn't going anywhere. It was just sitting there, and like it was just chilling. There was, it, you know, I don't know why you'd leave it on the sidewalk, but it looked like, you know, they didn't want it, and it wasn't going anywhere. I almost wish that I had, you know, picked it up myself, but I am not getting married, and I don't know whether or not, like, if I were to, you know, approach this subject with anybody, they'd be like, yeah, let's just get married for the hell of it, right? Like, it's not how it works. I'm not going to just go, yeah, I'll pick this up, this is mine now. Like, I don't know where it came from. It's like it's just chilling on the side of the road, or like on the sidewalk. It was just, I had to get around it a little bit, but it was just sitting there on the sidewalk. And I just kind of, it was weird. It was like discarded, like they didn't want it. And I don't know whether it's because, like, the bride or groom didn't like the cake. Again, like I said, I don't know this couple. It's just, I saw the cake sitting on the sidewalk, and it was just like they didn't want it, right? It was a beautiful cake, just they didn't want it. I don't know. And I don't know what to tell you, whether or not, like, I don't want to jinx the couple or anything, or like put a hex on them, or like, wow, well, we just decided to break up. This relationship isn't working out, so we don't need the wedding cake now. That close to their actual wedding. I don't want to say that that's what happened. I don't know who they are, but to see this wedding cake just sitting there on the sidewalk, chilling, like it was just brought back and they didn't want it or anything, because I don't know, like nobody was claiming it. It wasn't for anybody. It wasn't sitting outside of anybody's car. It was just sitting there on the edge of the sidewalk. I mean, I had to get around it because my walker takes up, like, I'd say at least half of the sidewalk. So sorry guys, I'm a bit of a, you know, I'm rolling with, say, like the semi of walkers, like the 18-wheeler of walkers. They're rather large and they take up a lot of room. So yes, I had to get around it. I had to finagle myself and get around it a little bit. But it kind of surprised me that a wedding cake would just be sitting on the sidewalk. Like, who just disregards a wedding cake? Yeah, it's chilling. I don't know whether it's like the bride and groom were a little too close together, like on the cake, I mean, or like it wasn't centered or what. I couldn't tell from where I was standing, even though I walked right by it. You know, just whether or not like the frosting was a millimeter off, I have no clue. Okay, I'm not a cake decorator. Yes, I love the Food Network, don't get me wrong. If that was the only channel I had, I'd be happy. Okay? I love the Food Network. And, you know, I've seen enough of, like, Duff Goldman's work and enough of these baking shows to know what a beautiful cake looks like. And I've been to enough weddings to know that, like, that was a wedding cake because you saw the bride and groom figurine right there on the top of the cake. It had a beautiful topper. It was piped really well. Yes, I know what piping is. Like I told you, love the Food Network, and I'll watch it every chance I get. So I know what piping is. It was like the designs and the decorative stuff piped beautifully from where I sit. Okay, I'm not a cake decorator. I'm not a baker. I'm in awe of this thing. It's just on the side of the road, like it's on the sidewalk, just chilling. Nobody's claiming it, and it looks like they just threw it out, or like disregarded it, or discarded it, or whatever. I couldn't believe it. Like, who just disregards a wedding cake? I never understand that whatsoever. Like, it's your wedding day. Like, it's for your wedding day, probably one of the most important days of your life. And for some reason, you didn't like the cake. You decided you didn't. I don't know. I don't want to say they decided they didn't like each other after all. But to have a full wedding cake, 3-4 tiers, sitting there, I'm like, yo, that's a tragedy almost. It's almost like unheard of. Who just goes, yeah, I didn't like the cake, so I'm gonna put it out on the sidewalk and maybe they'll just pick it up on like the next collection day for like the recycling or the, your compost or your garbage. Like, I'm just, why? But it's a cake? Like, why not? If you didn't like the cake, why not, A, give it back to the person that, like, designed it and made it for you, or donate the thing? I mean, you could do that, hypothetically. I don't know. Maybe that's me thinking too much into it, but you could, hypothetically, give it back to the baker, give it back to the cake decorator, whoever, and their staff, or you could donate it to somebody, or donate it to somewhere. Because I'm pretty sure that there are people that want wedding cakes that are getting married that can't afford wedding cakes. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm thinking too much into this thing, but it just seems a bit odd to find a full-on 3-4 tier wedding cake sitting there on the sidewalk. Like, you disregarded it. What are, like, ants going to get at it? Is it for the birds now? I get, like, we're going to get seagulls or whatever, pigeons flying down on it. I don't know. It just seemed really weird. I couldn't understand it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it because I just saw it not that long ago. By the time you guys hear this, like a month would have gone by. And it flabbergasts me that like a couple would just go, yeah, I don't want the cake. Or a person, whoever, just decided, yeah, I don't want this wedding cake anymore. Or like, you didn't want the person you were going to marry or what have you. I don't know what happened. Like I said, don't know the couple, but it just seems really weird that you would disregard a wedding cake and just go, yeah, it's the sidewalk's problem now. It's super, super, in my opinion, that is super strange. I've never seen that before where you walk by somebody's house or whatever because you're on your walk and then all of a sudden, you just see a discarded wedding cake. It's just super, super weird. I've never seen that before. I probably will never see it again. At least I hope I never see it again because, I mean, like, that's just too odd of a coincidence if I see it a second time. But I don't know whether something happened with the couple, don't know who they are, or, something happened where one person didn't like how it looked or something wasn't centered or what have you. But that is just so weird to see a discarded wedding cake. I mean, I would have taken it home because, like, wedding cake or not, I love cake. I have a massive sweet tooth. So yes, and I've even said this before on this show, I have a massive sweet tooth. Give me all the sweets in the world. Make my dentist angry. I don't care. Give me all the sweets. Chocolate cake, ice cream, doesn't matter. Give me. I'm not lactose intolerant. I don't care. Like, I would have taken it, but again, my moral compass was like, this doesn't belong to you. Leave it there. And I don't know how long it had been sitting there either, right? Because it looked like a fresh cake or like something that had been sitting, for at least a little bit, even though it looked immaculate. The frosting, the piping, the icing, what have you, all of it. It looked like it had just come from the baker. So, I don't know. It was just kind of weird. It kind of threw me off because that was just one of the odd things. Like, who just goes, yeah, I don't want the cake anymore, so we're just going to let the sidewalk deal with it. We're just going to let the elements take its course. Let nature sort of like devour the thing. I don't know. If I ever get married, so if there's ever a single woman out there that wants to marry a guy like me, if you have a problem with the cake that we get, tell me so ours doesn't end up on the sidewalk like this one did, okay? I don't want to like just disregard it because that's somebody's hard work. That's somebody's money. Well, obviously, you paid for the cake and you paid for their services, but that's the baker's hard work. That's the bakery's hard work, the decorator's hard work. But like I said, that's the baker's hard work. That's the bakery's hard work. That's your hard-earned money. That's the decorator's hard work. People put a lot of time and effort and money into this thing to make it look the way you wanted it. And for it to just be sitting on the sidewalk is kind of tragic. It's kind of a disappointment. I mean, if I were a baker, if I were a cake decorator, and my work just ended up on the sidewalk because somebody didn't like it and they didn't bother telling me or whatever, then yeah, I'd be pretty ticked off because I spent my time on that and I tried to make it look as beautiful as you wanted it. I tried to give you what you wanted, and there was obviously something in there that you didn't like, but you didn't bother to say anything, and you just decided to let Mother Nature take its course and let the elements deal with it. It just doesn't make sense. So, I mean, if the woman I end up marrying, if there's, ladies, if you're single, like, if the woman I end up marrying has a problem with the cake that we get or that she gets, and she just decides to surprise me and say, hey, I got a wedding cake, just for the hell of it, like, if there's a problem with it, say something, okay? Just so the cake doesn't end up on discarded cake row, which is pretty much the sidewalk or the street or, the side of the road, wherever it happens to end up, okay? Yeah, again, I don't know this couple. I'm just saying, like, to see a cake on the sidewalk is A, strange, B, not something you see every day, and it just kind of like, I'm very analytical, so I'm thinking about this a whole hell of a lot, probably more than I should, but it's like, what's going on there where you're like, I don't like the cake, I'm just going to let Mother Nature deal with it and let the elements take its course. Or it could be something where, like, the couple just decides they don't like each other anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking way too far into it, but, like, if that were me, if I were the baker or the decorator and the person that even delivered it, I'd be pretty ticked off, because that's people's hard work, that's hard-earned money, that's, money that they had to invest in, like, frosting, baking time, like, they have to run a business and stuff like that. And I would be super, super disappointed if my hard work was just disregarded and discarded on the sidewalk or the street for somebody to just do whatever with, or, have the birds pick at it, or have somebody's dog come by and scarf the thing down. I would be upset. I don't know. Like, that's just me. And it's strange to see it just chilling on the sidewalk. I'm like, who does that? That's a full wedding cake. 3-4 tiers, beautifully piped, beautifully frosted, and it's just sitting there because somebody didn't like it, or the couple decided they didn't like each other. Like, something happened to where they're like, I don't like this cake. We can't take it back because we paid for it, but what do? Oh, let's just throw it on the sidewalk because I don't want to look at it anymore. Like, why? It wasn't a disproportionate mess. Like, maybe this is my male brain thinking. Well, obviously, I am a male, so I'm going to think with a male brain. And I just don't understand. Here's the thing. Like, I understand if it's a minor imperfection on the cake that you didn't like, I don't want to say get over it, but it's a minor imperfection. I understand that, especially as a bride, you want this day to be perfect because you've been planning for it your entire life. You've been dreaming about it since you were a little girl. I understand that. Life isn't perfect, okay? Us as people, as humans, I'm not perfect. The people listening to this aren't perfect. I love you guys for being listeners, but people, as individuals and as a whole, we're not perfect, okay? There's no such thing as perfection on a whole. I mean, as an individual, as a person, you define what perfect is to you. If it's a minor imperfection on the wedding cake, like, you can overlook that a little bit, can't you? I mean, again, maybe this is just my male brain coming into play because I can't help it. I'm going to think like a guy because I am a guy. So, like, I just, I can't understand, whether or not, like, it's a small smidgen of, oh, well, the bride wasn't supposed to be over that far, or the groom and bride are too close together, or, it's just, the frosting's not right. It looks, but unless it's something that looks like a complete disaster, and it looks like something that's the complete opposite of what you asked for, as a guy, I wouldn't say anything. And I'd be like, honestly, if I understand that as a bride, especially, you've been dreaming of this day from the time you were a little girl, or from the time you could have dreams and aspirations and all that sort of stuff. But again, life is not perfect. There is no such thing as perfection on a whole. Everybody has their own definition of perfection. Everybody has their own definition of perfect. That's up to you to decide. But if it's something like super minor on the cake that, you can live without, because think about it. You have your friends there, you got your family there, you got the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. That's perfect enough. You're surrounded by loved ones. You're surrounded by the friends that you care about. You're surrounded by everybody that should be there, and they are there. And yet, if it's a minor imperfection and you're like, nah, let's just throw it out, that just seems like a waste to me, a waste of time, money, and energy. Just going, you know what? It's a minor imperfection. Let's just throw it out. That just seems like a waste to me, a waste of time, money, and energy. Just going, you know what? It's a minor imperfection. Let's just throw it out. That just seems like a waste to me, a waste of time, money, and energy. Just going, because they're like a millimeter over or like half a millimeter over, I'm going to throw the cake out. It just seems stupid. It seems petty, but that's just my way of thinking. I mean, if it's something that simple, like, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with, let's just throw a wedding cake out. Unless the cake design is completely left or right, like if it's not what you asked for, if it's completely the opposite of what you asked for, then yeah, okay, I probably wouldn't throw it out, but I'd talk to the bakery and go, hey, what is this? I'd talk to the baker and say, what is this? I didn't order it. It's not what I looked for, and it's not something that I wanted, right? So I would go about things that way. I'd go things about, just a bit differently, okay? I wouldn't just throw something out unless it's a complete and utter disaster. But this cake, like I said, 3-4 tiers, beautifully piped. It looked put together. I mean, it's not like they used duct tape or anything. It was frosting, cake, probably a dowel for each of the tiers to hold them in place. But, like, why would you throw out a perfectly good wedding cake? I never understand that. It seems weird to me. It's strange. It's not something that, like, you see every day and that everyday people do. I don't understand. Like, let's just throw it out. I don't like it. Whether it's something like that you really, unless that was what I consider, or like what I would consider like a good wedding cake, this 3-4 tier baking masterpiece, was completely left and something that you didn't ask for. But again, I would call the bakery. I would talk to the owner. I would talk to the decorators and stuff like that. That's what you plan your wedding for, right? You have to talk to people to get them to understand your vision of your perfect day. But then again, this is just my male brain coming into play. I'm sorry, I'm a guy, okay? I'm going to think this way, and I'm going to try and employ some logic, and I'm going to try and figure it out because I'm super analytical. That's just the way I'm built. I'm sorry, all right? But there it is, the let's find a discarded wedding cake on the side of the road. That's what happened to me today, and that's what you guys just heard this week on the Beats and Speaks podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I've been your host, LEIGHTDICKEY, but of course, you know that. Thank you again for tuning in this week. I've been LEIGHTDICKEY. This has been another episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast. Remember, new episodes are available every single Friday on my official website, LEIGHTDICKEY.com, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever podcasts are available. Please do rate us 5 stars and leave reviews too, if you would, please, and thank you. Find us on YouTube under LEIGHTDICKEY TV. Email me at LEIGHTDICKEY@gmail.com to get in touch. Send your comments, questions, topic requests, and everything else to LEIGHTDICKEY@gmail.com. Follow along on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at LEIGHTDICKEY. Of course, thank you all again for listening. I've been LEIGHTDICKEY. This wraps up another episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday for a brand new episode. Have a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
LEIGHTDICKEY.com